I'm listening to my good brother. Hey, pieces, brother Polight. I just wanted to get y'all in on a dope conversation that y'all should chime in on, write your questions or your comments. But since it's natural, I was just sitting here and a good brother was walking by and he had a profound appreciation for the information that's being shared. So he asked, what was I talking about with Aminette? And I was talking about death, quite frankly. We don't talk about it enough. And when we do, we don't talk about it enough because we have an aversion to death, obviously, for the reasons that makes many of us cry and get sad. But I think it's taken out of context. I think what I would like to say is that people are actually crying about life. And then that is actually a bit of jealousy involved, right? Because we say people are going to a better place. If they're going to a better place, then what are we crying about? Unless we're jealous. But that's another conversation. But I was just building with Aminette about death and how important death is. And Aminette was asking me questions. And she was getting real engaged. Because, you know, I'm always growing in perspective because I travel the world. And the reason why I travel the world is so I could take the time out and the opportunity to gain perspective from different communities and different cultures, to consume different foods, consume different herbs, breathe in different air, and learn different techniques and strategies. And in doing so, my worldview is constantly subject to change per my travel. And the least I can do, since everyone's not privy to be able to travel as much as I can, is to share the experience, share the perspective, not for the purposes of converting anybody, but just so I can add on, so to speak, as the gods in them would say, to add on for the purposes of you becoming more refined in your perspective. Because that's what we're doing when we're reading and when we're watching videos. We're just becoming more refined and we're becoming more fluent and expansive in our approach towards certain ideas that are age old, but may have only been discussed in circles that's limited to information because they're limited to experience. So we just here building. And so I titled this, Life Has No Purpose. That's the title of this particular stream. Life has no purpose. And when I say life has no purpose, I mean, we'll find out right now. But anyway, I'm building with the brother. We're going to get to that. You know, we could pick it up from there. But I just wanted the family to know that I'm just catching us live. You know, catching us live in full effect. And you know, we just get the build on.
Like, you're one of the like I want to practice this, right?
You good? You good?
All right, yeah. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the implications why, because a lot of it is deep in some.
Just talk loud enough so people can hear you. That's all.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Most definitely will. So, life has no purpose. So, like, is your argument removing consciousness as choice in determining what the purpose of life is, or are you saying that the intent, there's an intent behind the universe that's removed in some sense?
I can't remove consciousness. Consciousness in many aspects is inevitable. But when I say life has no purpose, the first thing is this. That's one of the greatest questions in this existence. What's the purpose of life, correct?
Yeah.
It's
It drives humanity.
What's that?
It drives humanity.
It drives humanity. What's the purpose of life? So let's think about it. Because we call this life. So let's deal with that model right now. What is the greatest thing that anyone could do on planet Earth? Now, we can say what we believe to be the politically correct answer, and then we can say what we really feel at heart. So you can pick either one of the two, or just pick one, or they probably run concurrent. But I'm going to just ask you, and I'm going to ask y'all, what's one of the greatest things that a person could do in this lifetime?
It's subjective. If you're
of course it's subjective.
Progressively.
And you have the right to say whatever you want. There's no wrong answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, on a progressive level, if you want to just be accurate in some sense, I'm pretty sure on a societal level, probably be Western societal level in this modern age, going to college.
Okay, no problem.
Pursuing,
I'm with that.
Education
Going to college.
I think to some extent it does expand the mind. However, like.
And then what do you say? Because you gave me probably Western civilization's perspective is going to college. Now, what do you say is probably the greatest thing a person could do while being here?
See, I think if there's tension in what you want out of life, you know, someone were to actually have like a trial and tribulation that would prevent them in any instance
Yes.
to pursue what they wanted to do,
Yes.
despite what it would be subjectively, even moral compass, I think, even with me, I'm very open-minded with cause and effect.
Yes.
And
Keep it in. I'm gonna have to just put it in your direction, but below you, so they can hear you better, because the mic is fixing that, the mic is fixing that way.
Okay,
So I'll have
yeah.
a position like that. You can kind of jump very out, but just some kind of position there below is changing. You heard? Yeah, I want to make sure the mic picks up, brother. Yeah. All right. So.
The people are like, show his face.
Show his face. I know.
It's respectful.
I know. So we're going to get to the brother. But now this is the thing. When I ask people quite often, what is the purpose of life? It's always a long answer that often doesn't give us any real
I mean,
specifics.
this is truly what you make it. Now, like, can I ask at that point, in that instance, if
It's not what I want to make it. I'm just asking you. And if,
it's
like I
what
said, if I
people
ask
choose.
anybody that's walking around here, you know, what's the greatest thing a person could do on planet Earth? Because with that brings purpose.
But now, I think a greater question would be how that influences the world. How everybody's
That's not my
decisions
question. That's your question.
Yeah.
So it'd be a greater question from your disposition.
Mm.
But what we want to address, I'll address your question too. You know, I'm about to ask this lady something real quick. Excuse me, miss. Let me ask you a quick question. What's the greatest thing a person could do on planet Earth right now? In your opinion, nobody else's. What's one of the greatest things? I'll say one of the greatest, not even the greatest.
We'll spread love.
Spread love? Great, I appreciate that. That was a dope answer. Greatest things a person could do on planet Earth is spread love. You know, I'm in conformity with that. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to ask people, what is the purpose of life? Watch what happens when we ask people what's the purpose of life. For the so-called living, right? It's very interesting. We don't got the purpose of life. If you become a doctor, you got a certain purpose. If you become a ball player, of course you want to win the championship. It's purpose. If you're a boxer, you probably want to unify the titles. You want to win in several different classes, win amongst your class, take all the belts. When it comes to life, we don't know the purpose. Car racing knows its purpose. Truck driving knows its purpose. Basketball player knows his purpose. Boxing knows his purpose. Father knows his purpose. These are different hats that we can wear while purportedly alive. However, if we just ask, then what's the purpose of life? Because are we going to say the purpose of life is to become a basketball player, or become a trucker, or become a boxer? I don't believe the reason we exist is to become any one of those things. Then the question becomes, then why do we exist in the first place? What is the purpose? Now, I contend life has no purpose.
Yeah.
That's what I contend, right? And that's going to be weird for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But because I'm thinking to the contrapositive. Sometimes we got to see things the other way around, and we also got to get it wrapped into permutations, right? In this particular case, might be a combination. So, for instance, if I say from numbers 0 to 9, right? 10, even though we know 0 non-cipher, you know, but we're going to omit that. From 0 to 9, right? Let's say in using 0 to 9, how many different combinations of 3 can I put 0 to 9? Right? And some will call it permutation, but actually it's more on the combination level. Because if you couldn't use something in particular, it'd be a permutation. And we could do that as well and still get the same answer if we add another digit to it. But that's another conversation. So, but a good word for now is permutation. So we got 0 to 9, and we want to use numbers 0 to 9 in any of 3 different arrangements. Maybe 120, 304, 508. How many different combinations can we come up with if we were to use 0 to 9? Right? Now the answer would be 1,000. Right? It'd be 10 to the 3rd power. That's us knowing how to see layers of the thing. See, mathematics puts this thing real good. Mathematics puts a lot of things into perspective. And mathematics coupled with physics, which they go hand in hand, will definitely give us our answer. But if we're not, so spiritualists are physicists. And the problem is, they separated the two in society.
Yeah.
And you cannot be a spiritualist based on application, right? without being a physicist. Now, the distinction may be one's ability to articulate what's transpiring. So let me say it like this. A physicist will be able to better articulate what's transpiring spiritually. And because they're able to articulate what's transpiring, we're in better hands with them because there's a cutoff.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you about riding a bike, right? And then you'll probably learn how to ride a bike. But then the conversation is now, how do we articulate it? Like they say you can't tell a blind man about color. You could tell a blind man about color. You may not be able to show him it, but you could tell him about it. Because color ranges in different degrees based on the torso donut. It's a fact. Like 90 degrees is green. You feel what I'm saying? Like 90 degrees. A 90-degree angle gives you green. It's the color that's not accepted. So red, blue, orange, all of them have an angle that they can be interpreted by. So colors are brought into existence based on angular momentum. This is a fact. So you can't explain color to a blind person. I'm saying all this to say is that if we deal with the physics of existence, then life has no purpose. And contextually, it will make sense because you can name any occupational task, any vocational skill that one may adopt on planet Earth. And you're not going to convince me or anyone else that's the reason why you're on planet Earth. You're not going to tell me you're on planet Earth just to be a scientist. It sounds good. Or it sounds good. You know, I'm on planet Earth to become a scientist. I'm on planet Earth to become a speaker to uplift humanity. So that means in order for you to fulfill your life's purpose, people must suffer because they are in need of you. So who created that situation? So in order for you to have purpose, many must suffer because you was only brought here for the purposes of uplifting those that are down. So why do people got to be down in the first place? And is it inevitable that people have to be down so people like you can keep coming into existence? Because then now the people who are doing the uplifting have to now become part of the problem. Because you need a problem for you to exist.
But it's a dual necessity because you kind of need them in order to really be fulfilled, right?
Of course. We exist in a network, right? But let me explain further what I'm talking about. Bambi gets eaten by the lion. Why do we have to live in that kind of cycle? What kind of vicious cycle is it? For those of us that believe in God, God created a situation where it's okay for animals to eat animals except for the human. The human can eat the animals, right? Even though the human is also part of the animal kingdom. Very interesting notion that we need to take care of. The human that's part of the animal kingdom, God commissions them to eat certain meat in the Bible. While it's at the same time, he also says the fruit of the tree shall be meat to you. It's very confusing.
Is it a capacity for appreciation or maybe even value in life itself?
Why do we have to murder in order to sustain our life?
Value.
Why do we gotta murder in order to sustain our life? Why do I gotta kill animals and consume their flesh in order for me to stay alive? What kind of vicious cycle is that? And then God set up a situation that in the animal kingdom, okay, in the aquatic world, it's all vicious for everybody and everything to survive. It's a vicious cycle. And even if I eat kale, I am taking away life. I'm a murderer as well. Because I eat live food. At least people eating meat eat dead food. I eat live food. The food that I consume be alive when I eat it. I'm just as guilty, if not more guilty, because my food is alive when I eat it.
I mean, the fact that we have to like eat food and eat life and take from the life to live.
Or do we even have to eat food now? You see, I'm not looking to throw you all over the place. I'm building up momentum.
Yeah.
But it's my contention that we really don't even have to eat food. We don't have to be part of this.
We don't have to eat 3 times a day. We don't have to do all
No, I'm telling you, it's my contention.
You're saying at all.
We don't have to eat food. But this is a fact.
I felt that way.
Studies have shown through H.R. Henner that he was able to go a whole year without consuming food because he just through the skill of solar gazing. And if you add 5 seconds per day to solar gazing, by the time you get up to 9 months, you should be about 45 minutes deep. And the necessity to consume anything, you'll be void of, as well as disease. Now, I'm going to tell you this. When I came home from prison, my wife would tell you, when I was solar gazing and everything, get into it, I couldn't even feel cold in the winter, right or wrong. I'm talking New York cold. I'm out there with a t-shirt like this. No pneumonia, none of that. I couldn't do it. And just watching people eat was making me want to throw up. Even vegetables. My family can tell you, I went 3 months, no eating. I was drinking herbs. Didn't lose weight. In fact, I gained In fact, I gained a little more mass.
Yeah, I've been in the same.
You feel what I'm saying? Now, this is something, because I learned that through H.R. Henner when I was studying solar gazing. That's one of the master solar gazers on planet Earth, right? So when I started studying and getting that information, I'm like, yo, let me see what's good. I didn't force myself to stop eating. It happened. You feel what I'm saying? But what also happened was I couldn't connect with my people. I was in such a spiritual space mentally. I'm getting disgusted when I see people eating. I don't even like hearing people talking. I was getting a little weird. And in order for me to fulfill my purpose at that time, which I thought it was, I gotta uplift fallen humanity. I'm gonna have to be able to connect with the people I'm looking to uplift. So I had to indulge. So now I'm like, where's balance in this? Because I could have saved myself in the process. But instead, now I'm indulging. Now, am I satisfying a conviction that I formerly had because I probably want to go back to eating? And I'm using human beings as an excuse instead of taking myself to a more transcendental level? Am I using this as an excuse to come down and build with people? So now I got to introspect, because why wouldn't I take myself to the height? But if I take myself to the height, I ain't coming back for y'all. Because I can't unless I be amongst y'all and do as y'all do. Because my journey was taking me, well, I got to go somewhere around the world where this construct doesn't exist. I got to go to a part of nature that's more in conformity with the way I was thinking and evolving and thought. The city ain't it. You know what I'm saying? The city ain't it. And I was being disgusted with human beings. These are facts. This is how I'm coming from a personal perspective. Now I'm going to go back to the cipher. What's the purpose of life? Because a person will tell you life has purpose until you ask them what's the purpose of life. So I'll wait for y'all. Y'all could tell me as well what's the purpose of life.
Some said to live to your fullest potential.
Yeah, y'all got that from me. To live to your fullest potential. X out what I've ever said. Yes. So, but watch this. We have to modify that though. Because I took something out of context when I said that by one word, and that's what I mean by the contrapositive. We have to rearrange the sentence to figure out what's going on. Here's an example. I said to myself, man, there's people getting paid $50,000 for, what's up? There's people, matter of fact, let me flip it on.
What just happened?
There's people getting paid. I gotta do it. Flip it. Yeah, I got it. There's people getting paid $50,000 for motivational speaking. So I said to myself, let me hear what they're saying, because I know I'm worth more than 50K. I heard what they were saying, very uplifting, very empowering. I'm not gonna say I'm better than these people that's doing motivational speaking. I'm gonna say that what they was contributing to humanity was well worth it. And so I said to myself, man, how the heck do I start getting paid more? Because I'm giving it up. But I had to look at it to the contrapositive. I was looking at the speaker and the content. I wasn't looking at the people bringing in the speaker. So then I had to learn the type of people that invest that type of money for motivation. And that's when I was able to make an adjustment in what I had going on with me personally, right? So I say this to say, this is the same thing about the purpose of life. We over here, think about it. From the time, let's think about it. From the time that we're born, and I'm actually the same thing. From the time that we're born, what's happening? What happens to you? Second the umbilical cord gets cut, what's happening to you?
It's an interaction between you and external reality.
And part of that interaction, that's cool, that's a dope answer. It's actually a fact. You're interacting with external reality per coming out of the womb. I'm with all of that. What's happening? Okay, let's do this. Do you believe in life after death?
Why after?
Huh?
Why after?
I just asked. That's what most people believe in. That's a good question, but I'm just asking.
I'm at a point where I question patterns, as far as the human experience is concerned. To some degree, if you're going to talk about beliefs, I believe that energy can be destroyed, that in some sense, even just as far as like quantum superposition, there are things like that you can only really explain through physics and spirituality that
I dig it.
that exists outside of what is perceived as physical reality. And I
So-
mean, obviously,
so-
like the implications of the spiritual.
So now I
existence.
got to get some specifics from you. What are you calling this existence, and what are you calling the existence after this? I know some have qualified.
I think it's simultaneous. In some sense.
What's simultaneous?
So like, death is happening right now. In some sense.
There you go. I'm with that.
We're already operating just
And
by
do
the
you-
fact that it will happen.
And since death is happening now, death intimates some kind of limitation or end of a process or a cycle. So are you suggesting to us when you say death is happening now that nothing happens after? Or is something happening after?
It's all in its own experience, and that's it. And you call it what you want to call it. You can say it's there or it's not.
So if you had to call it
The
something,
fact that you can is that in itself as well. The fact that humans can even question the fact that there is life and death, and it also suggests that it's life in itself.
so is it, what do we want to call the state after death? Do you want to call it after death? Do you want to call it death after death? What do we want to call this process after death? Because it's
I
definitely,
think it's just all happening.
or do
all
you
at
feel
once.
there's no process taking
I
place?
think it's all happening all at once.
You think it's all happening all at once?
And I think they affect each other. I think there's communication and cause and effect between those worlds in some sense. You know, when people die, you have people like, I guess that want a spirit or something like that to move on, or you know, you have like unsettled spirits. Like this is where we get to that degree. When people are affected by someone else's death in some sense.
I got you.
This is like an instinctual, like an actual real thing that takes place where death is in life itself. So there's
Gotcha.
no in and out, there's no after or before, it's just all together. It's duality, it's in one.
Got you. So this is what I'm going to say. From the time that we come into existence, we're dying. It's obvious. That part we both agree on. From the time we come into existence, we're dying. That's agreed upon, correct?
We're already dead.
No doubt. Well, I wouldn't say we're already dead, but I would say this is a death process, a death cycle. Okay? We're not getting younger the time we come out the womb. We're getting older. We're on our way out. Even if it looks like we're growing tall, which is the illusion, we're getting taller, we're learning how to walk. We are walking into the direction of dying, called death, when it's at its end. So, it stands to reason, one thing that's key and significant, which is about the contrapositive statement that I was making earlier. When I was talking about the contrapositive overview, to see things, to get answers, why are dead people, right? Or let's say this, why are people that are dying looking for the purpose of life?
I mean, it's irony. Yeah, it's irony.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why are people that are presently dying looking for the purpose of life instead of the purpose of death?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You feel me?
You have to.
Because it stands to reason, since this is more applicable and immediate to the circumstances that surround us from the time we're born, and we get to bear witness to other people get born. We get to bear witness to other people being born. We get to endure this process ourselves, and we get to watch it at every level. We may be able to understand life to an extent if we evaluated the purpose of this death process.
Really in its entirety, because I mean, you got to
So-
consider a lot of ancients and even just us in modern society. We do that. We consider what is existent outside of our own life. You know, our children.
That's
our
right.
grandchildren, our-
So watch this. Watch this right here. So we cannot properly evaluate life unless we learn what death's purpose is. We cannot properly evaluate life unless we learn what is death's purpose. Because that's one thing that's imminent, it's inevitable, and it's presently taking place every waking moment that we watch this stream right now. All of us are dying. But we all go into shock when it happens to somebody. You know what I'm saying? So this means we haven't come to terms or come to grips with reality.
If there's just an imbalance of just wanting the purpose of life, but not wanting to understand the purpose of death.
Well, I will tell you this. Life can't even have a purpose if we don't determine what death is. how life is going to have a purpose. Like, let's do this. They say, go to school so you can get a job, right? They don't say get a job to go to school. One is prerequisite. You're going to have involution, evolution, and revolution. You're going to have inception, conception, and birth. There's always going to be that triune scenario. You feel what I'm saying? So you have involution, evolution, revolution, or inception, conception, birth. In order to create, you have to take from that which was made. Therefore, there must be some destruction.
Yep. And even on your behalf, there will be your own.
You feel what I'm saying?
As in everyone. So I mean, the process is very universal in some sense.
I dig it. So now what we have to then say is, okay, you're not going to tell a child where to go get something to eat or be breastfed before they're even born. They got to be born first for the breast milk to even have any relevancy. But upon stimulus of hunger, that child is going to then say, you know what? I know exactly where to go because it's pre-encoded. It's part of the cycle. It's part of the process. It's happened so many times in the death cycle that it's pre-encoded in the child's DNA to do so without even instruction. Void of instruction. Destruction is going to take place because we're talking about consumption, which is a form of destruction. It's a fact. For us to have carbon, right, which is element 6, we knew that element 8 had to already exist, which we knew water already had to exist. So the story about God creating the earth isn't even plausible. The story, the way they gave us in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved across the waters. Well, we already knew water had to exist from the time that we know that there was any light. Why do we know that? Because there has to be a burning for light to even exist. For carbon to exist, something had to be burnt or decomposed or destroyed. And in order for something to be burnt, decomposed, or destroyed, oxygen has to exist because that's number 8. So carbon 6 tells us, carbon 6 tells us at least 9 things existed. Now this is crazy. If I know elements 1 to 8 exist, all because of element number 6, I know number 9 exists. That's how wild this situation is. This is like if a frog goes up 3 feet, if a frog jumps into a 30-foot well and it goes up 3 feet every day, but every day that it goes up 3 feet, it falls down 1 foot. How many days does it take that frog to get out? And we're not going to say the top of the well is another set height. We're going to say on that last day is out. We're not going to say, well, the ledge is this thick when it gets to the top. Now, how many days would that be? If we deal with the fact that we just want the frog to get to the 30-foot mark. If 30 days in a month, let's call it that. We're not doing 31 days out the month. We're not doing none of that. 30-day month. The well is 30 feet deep. The frog goes inside of the 30-foot well. You can also answer. The frog goes inside the 30-foot well. It goes up 3 feet every day. But unfortunately, it drops down 1 foot every time to rest. It gets tired after it does the 3 feet. It hops, wow. But it falls down 1 foot. Goes another 3 feet, goes down 1 foot. Goes another 3 feet, goes down 1 foot. How many days does it take for this frog to get out of this 30-foot well?
Brother Polight, can I actually, I don't mean to but I really want to have like a moment with you in general.
Oh, we could do that. Let's finish up this in a few minutes and we good.
Yeah. Okay,
Let's finish this because there's purpose to what I'm saying.
Because I'm building it all together in my mind.
No doubt. Because what I'm doing, there's context to what I'm saying. And this is all about life. Because it's a cycle that's constantly taking place, but there's parts of the cycle we don't see. This is what I was also talking about when I saw my permutations. When there's different layers, different things are taking place all at the same time, right? And you say, yo, maybe it's the occurrence, maybe it's all happening at the same time. Death, life, we say stuff like that. So now I'm constantly, as a teacher, you see if you could spark interest in several different other types of ideas. And if you spark that engine, whether the person gets it right or wrong, they're inclined to start seeing the pattern or some kind of deterministic algorithm to the speech being employed, where when we get to the point that I want to make, it all makes sense anyway, because your mind is factoring in how many damn days does it take this frog to get out of there anyway. You feel me? And it's a very good question that we should address. 17 days? Nope, it ain't 17 days. But it's way more than those days, family. But it's a very interesting thing. Remember, If it's going up 3 feet and it's dropping 1 every time it's getting rest, then it goes up another 3 feet, then it drops 1 every time it gets rest.
So that's 2 times 30.
Yo, you know what? I'm not even gonna give y'all the answer for this stream. I want y'all to play with that. Because these types of
I got 460.
mathematical challenges, right? Not problems. We don't never have math problems. We don't have word problems. We don't have no problem with words. We're not gonna do that. These type of challenges, right? Words are very important. It's our GPS of reality. These type of challenges
I like that.
cause us to think in ways that when we're confronted with other types of adversity, believe it or not, math gives us the conviction or the confidence to persevere. Because now we had to do critical thinking when we have these math challenges, so much so that what happens when we do this critical thinking? We're more responsive to how to solve issues because we're used to thinking and evaluating, and then we start seeing patterns. So then I ask you another type of question similar to that one. You'll probably say, you know what? I understand it. You know, a bat and a ball costs $1.10. The ball is $1 more than the bat. How much is the ball? Absolutely wrong.
Say it again.
A bat and a ball costs $1.10.
The bat and the ball.
A bat and a ball costs $1.10. The bat is $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball?
10 cents.
That's
No?
what everybody would say.
What?
It's 5 cents. Think about it. I know it sounds like it makes sense.
Wait. Say it again. Say it again.
Overall price is
Say it again.
A bat and ball costs $1.10.
Right.
The bat is $1 more than the ball.
I'm over here thinking about taxes and shit.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I know everybody's saying 10. 60 cents is out the window, and it's not 17 days for the other one. Yo, we're going to do a stream and decode the answers to these things. This stuff is important because it keeps the mind spinning. So now you may be asking, why am I saying these things when we talking about the purpose, not of life now? We ain't established no purpose of life is irrelevant because we're dying. So first we need to establish or evaluate what's the purpose of death. We got to evaluate what's the purpose of death because people are dying talking about what's the purpose of life and you're dying. Like, yo, what's the purpose of death? We're dying. That's what we need to know. What's the purpose of death? What's the purpose of dying? Are we just coming here to just get a job? Look, you go to a job, you go to work, you work 8 hours. You probably take an hour to go to work, an hour to come back, 10 hours. They suggest that we sleep 8 hours out the day, which is a third of our lifetime. So we say, nah, we're going to probably sleep 6 hours. The average person sleeps 6 hours a day. So between, or in a cycle, I should say, 6 hours a cycle, 24 hours in a cycle. I don't like to say 12. I don't like to say day without including the whole 24 because the premise of shadow hour, or what they call night, which means the absence of light, and it's never an absence of light. Shadow hour. So anyway, we got to get specific. It keeps our brain going. So anyway, if you sleep in 6 hours, average person does, you go to work 9 to 5, 8 hours, and you probably travel 1 hour about to and fro to go to work, then you've used 16 hours out the cycle just going to work to manifest someone else's dream. That means we only have 8 hours left out the cycle of 24, which tells us I spend at minimum 2/3 of my life preparing to create someone else's version of life.
Oh, you better make it your version.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
The average person going to work
Yeah,
is working for someone else.
that's a reality. I mean, but do you think there's any incentive like that's not a part of their dreams as well to make money?
Part of their
You know,
dreams
it's like
to work for somebody else?
decentralization or-
We both live on planet Earth, so let's do this.
Okay.
We both know the average person working a job right now is fulfilling someone else's mission, sending someone else's children to school. We know this. We know the average person working right now is not working for themselves. They're working for someone
There
else.
are conflicting interests.
Now, not conflicting interests. If watch this. I don't want to sell crack on these streets to make a living, but I can get hired to sell cigarettes over the counter. I don't want to sell weed on these streets and get locked up, but I can get hired to sell cigarettes over the counter at a pharmacy, and guess what? For most people, it'd be socially acceptable if I sold cigarettes over the counter as opposed to sold drugs in the corner when cigarettes got over 400 poisons in it. But whose dream is that? I'm just doing it because I got to pay my rent. I'm sorry. I'm going to sell you these cigarettes even though I know it's not good.
You're playing the role of someone.
So watch this. I'm sorry. I'm going to sell you this ham even though I know it creates kachina worms in your brain. And they're going to write it off as a brain cancer. And they ain't going to tell you brain cancer is a worm in your head. Because if they said a worm in your head, you're going to get the worm out my head. They say you got brain cancer, you're going to be like, damn, man. Do I need chemotherapy or something? But if you know you got a worm in your head, get this goddamn worm out my head. It's all in the words. It's all in the power of the words, right? So watch this. The concept that I was making was this. We go to work, 8-hour days, 9 to 5, probably to and fro to travel, 2 more hours, 1 hour to go, 1 hour to come back, that's 10 hours plus. We're sleeping on an average of 6 hours per cycle. That's 10 plus 6, which is 16. That's 2/3 of our life committed to creating or building someone else's opportunity or someone else's dream. Why is that important? If I'm working 2/3, if 2/3 of my life is only qualified, and as far as the fact that I'm building someone else's dream, I only got 1/3 of my life left to my dream or my vision. Factor that in this equation to death and purpose, because everybody want to know what's the purpose of life, but everybody's dying that's asking that question. Everybody's dying. You feel what I'm saying? Asking what's the purpose of life. So now that we've established that everyone's dying and the purpose of life is irrelevant because we need to find out what the purpose of dying is, and then we realize in our death we're going to spend 2/3 of our death working for someone else, killing ourselves for someone else. So now let's put it in context. We're spending 2/3 of our death killing ourselves for someone else. Because we only have 1/3 of our death left to ourselves. How embarrassing. See, we're putting this into context. Now, what we got to do is this. Here's the question. I'm at looking like, this is interesting. And she got Matt's face when Matt's focusing like, what? So now, here, oh, y'all with me? Are y'all walking with me? You still on? Leave that alone. And the reason why I did that was because of this. Something magical, when I say magical, I'm talking about physics. Something magical happens when we focus. Okay? Something magical happens. A longitudinal propagation of waves is made manifest when we pay close attention to detail. With that focus, the same waves that's being propagated are the same waves that's emanated from the body when one dies. Right? And depending on where one establishes their place of death, which means this, first of all, let's say this. Burial grounds, cemeteries, seminaries, places where people go to pray, should be positioned and have been positioned on planet Earth, geomagnetically speaking, in places where there's longitudinal propagations of waves. And that's on purpose. Anywhere you see any megalithic stones or you see old temples and seminaries, they all happen to be on the same part of the grid where the ley lines or the longitudinal waves exist, because electromagnetic waves go horizontally across the planet Earth. So what we need is longitudinal waves that propagate to promote our ascension. And ascension not necessarily meaning going up or down. Ascension meaning a different vibrational frequency we need to go after. Let's do this. We call this thing sunlight, right? Let's look at this thing. We call this thing sunlight. That's what we call that. It's very interesting. If you took a picture of the sun, it would be black. Right? So we know that's an illusion up there. Peace, King.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom, man.
Shabbat shalom, King.
How you doing, boy?
Doing good. I'm on live, just building about the life having no purpose. Word. Yep. So.
I'm gonna let y'all be.
All right, cool, man. Thanks for listening, King. Yeah. So now we cooking, because I'll tell you this: if we take nothing from this death process right now, what we must learn is the ability to pay attention or focus. Because the ability to concentrate your thought process empowers you with the ability to promote your consciousness or propagate your consciousness with the collective hereafter. The conscious community exists after this death time. This is what the Parrot and Haru means. Or this is what Pakata Shapamawit, or what you call the Book of the Dead, is all about. The Book of the Dead, properly translated, is a ritual procession into the awakening. Meaning it's a collective consciousness, it's a conscious community, a group of collective consciousness going into an awakening, which would mean that we're actually asleep. Subsequently, what we need to also take into context is this. Junk DNA is at about 95 to 97% of everybody's makeup. So they only understand about 3 to 5% of our DNA. So they only understand about 3% of our DNA. And they say 97% of this junk DNA tends to activate in our death. So this means, by definition, what is death? Death is acting on 3% of your life. Because 97% of life manifests once you're done with the dying process. We getting closer to purpose. We getting closer to purpose here. You feel what I'm saying? Now, I'm not making this stuff up. All of this can be referenced.
So how you activate this while you're
Well, you see,
dying?
it ain't. That's the problem. We want to activate life.
Or you're not supposed
Life is.
to.
Now, let's go back to when I gave you the model for the breastfeeding.
Right.
Upon stimulus of hunger, the baby knew where to be weaned by the mother because it was pre-encoded, right or wrong? So, if we do what it suffices to do to raise ourselves in consciousness in this lifetime, it's already encoded or embedded into the psychology of that which we call consciousness to be responsive to that which we call life. It's not something that we have to think about or do or initiate. It's something that we have to be prepared for. So the purpose of death is the preparation of life. So we're supposed to spend this time preparing to live through the activity of paying attention. Now, I know that's crazy. So now let's go back to this. What was the purpose of life? Before we said the purpose of life was to live to our fullest potential. Only problem was in the context that there's life after death, right? Because I struggled with life after life, death after life. But if the populace say life after death, then we know this is death. Now I'm in conformity with this being death because we're actually dying.
Sure.
But we don't have to always die. Unfortunately, most will. And what I mean by that is many won't see life again. They won't remember. And what I mean by the ability to live, the ability to retain memories from one existence to the next. You feel what I'm saying? If you can retain consciousness from one manifestation to the next,
Paying attention.
you're conscious, you're alive, you're living. You feel what I'm saying? If you cannot retain memories, you die. You gotta do it all over again. And we don't know what level you on. And so the key to death is to establish bliss. So what I told you earlier, I said I'm in a race with life for bliss in the interim of my death. That's what I said. What is bliss? Bliss is the void of desire, void of concern, void of worry. This is what they call heaven, right? Bliss, right? The purpose of death is to establish bliss in the interim of this cycle before the threshold of life. Because guess what? There will be no life if you have no bliss. And that's the conundrum we find ourselves in. They taught us to get bliss after this death time. But if you don't establish bliss in this death time, there will be no life. Because you're not part of the program or the operating system that's conducive to this computer simulation that we're calling the afterlife. Now you may say, where are you getting this information from? And I can prove it based on mathematics and physics. And that's coming up. That's coming up. We just having a build here. We just having to build here. That's all this is. We having to build. But we got to talk about propagation. We got to talk about grounding. What is grounding? You ever took the batteries and the wires and learned how to get that electricity going through grounding? Or understanding what grounding means and represents to electricity? And then you turn around and you see us wearing these rubber shoes and we're blocking off our connection to the planet. And then guess what? We find out now scientifically that anybody living on the second floor upward is more vulnerable and susceptible to disease, and not just any disease, even idiopathic diseases. By idiopathic, we mean not even readily understood by contemporary science. Second to that, it's very likely, peace gang, very likely that the diseases will coalesce, which means correlation of disease just means when two diseases somehow merge and create their own type of disease together. So the higher you are, the more vulnerable and susceptible you are to disease. These high buildings not supposed to manifest, not supposed to be made manifest, because it's cutting off, it's short-circuiting us. We're supposed to tap in to the grid, the telluric grid, supposed to tap into the grid of planet Earth. That's why they call the bottom of the shoe the soul. Not soul for psyche, soul for sun. There's 600-mile sun on the planet Earth. You feel what I'm saying? This is real talk. This is real talk. So we're supposed to tap in to the grid. We're supposed to be dealing with grounding, just like grounding is represented when we're dealing with chemistry class or engineering. Grounding when we learn it in engineering, grounding when we learn it in science class. Grounding is the same thing when we're dealing with human beings, with women having a centrifugal energy and men having a central pedal energy. Okay, two different poles. And we know the battery can't work unless it has a cathodic pole, not negative, and a positive pole. Okay, so you gotta have a cathodic pole and a positive pole. Negative is a misnomer to throw us into a whole different sphere of thought or spectrum of thought where we start thinking about bad energy. But obviously we're not talking about bad energy, we're talking about a battery, right? And so, what was the purpose of the Book of the Dead? Well, we now know the Pera and Heru, or the Apocalypse Shipamawut, or the Book of the Dead, which is falsely translated, means ritual procession into the awakening. And the reason why we can properly translate it as the awakening is because the image that they use in the Medu Neter, right? We're able to determine, right? That's what they actually call this thing, right? But determinative. But the image that they use for the awakening is Heru, is the sun at dawn. And what happens at dawn? There's an awakening. So where did you get the word dead from? At dawn, seeing the sun at dawn means plants start to rise. People start to wake up. So we know that it is a ritual procession into proper translation and awakening, or into consciousness or awareness, right? So the purpose of the book itself is dedicated to who? The Book of the Dead is dedicated to who? Properly translated, the ritual procession into the awakening. The collective consciousness is dedicated to Usir, Osiris. And what does Osiris' name means? To awaken. So why would the book be called the Book of the Dead if it's dedicated to an entity whose name means to awaken? Because the purpose of the Book of the Dead is to do what? To become an Osiris. So you don't become an Osiris by dying or going to sleep. You become an Usir by awakening. So the purpose of the Book of the Dead, which is dedicated to Osiris, which commissions anyone who reads it to become like him in the afterlife, which is the after death, right? To become like him in the after death is to be woke. And the Book of the Dead means the conscious collective, or the conscious community going into awakening. So the conscious community exists in the after deaths, where we are commissioned to be woke. These are all our terms all over again in modern day. I'm not making this up. This is proper translation. So now watch this. Now we know that they said that our ancestors was fixated on death based on their eschatological and cosmogonical texts. Now we know they were fixated on awakening. That was a half-truth. Their only fixation about after death, and that's why I was asking earlier, so would you say death or after death, right? So it's all coming back full cipher. The whole reason why they was focused on death time was so they can maintain their awareness hereafter. So you had to go through a ritual, right? Open their mouth ceremony. You had to go through a ritual, right? To become an Usir, because Usir means to be woke or to be awakened, right? And whose job or task was it to awaken Osiris or Usir? The lack repressor. Because now we're talking proteins, but that's another conversation that we've done with biosymbiotics. The milk goddess, Set, whose depiction is what? A throne. Now watch this. To sit on a throne, right, is to put your body at a perpendicular, like this. Several perpendiculars. What does that look like? A staircase. That's the image of Set in the Medu Neter. It's a staircase. But it wasn't really a staircase. Well, her name means throne, but if you look at the image, it's several perpendiculars. And you can sit on an image like that, like this. You can sit on an image like that. Why is her glyph represented as like this staircase looking thing? Because if a child sits, it's the milk goddess, right? If a child sits on their mother to be breastfed, that becomes their throne for enlightenment. Through the breast milk, which only a God can give you, that which is only designed for you for the purposes of raising your IQ, your digestive system, your ability to socialize with the rest of the world. But so she's the throne. And guess what? And through the nourishment of the mother, who's responsible for bringing this child here, right? She was responsible for bringing her husband back in the personage of her son. You feel what I'm saying? And he sat on the throne, which is none other than her body, to be breastfed, to restore some form of this consciousness. This is why breastfeeding is so very important. And we're going to go back to one other thing, because we were talking about the permutations, and we were talking about the frog going up going down a well that's 30 feet and going down one and up 3. All of this was to do what? When you focus on anything, you create those longitudinal propagation waves, right? That helps you in your ascension when it comes to consciousness. We'll talk about that. Why is that important? This is important because now we understand that one of the greatest things you can do, the main thing you got to do in this death time, is to excel in anything that you do. Die to your fullest potential. That means if you're a basketball player, strive to be the best basketball player you could be. If you're a doctor or nurse, strive to be the best doctor or nurse you could be. If you're just a father and that's what you take pride in the most, strive to be the best father you could be. And then if you can, compound interest and find something else you can be good at that you're interested in and establish focus in it, because focus creates longitudinal waves that propagate, right?
Solidify memory.
That will empower you with the ability to translate that same ability to focus when it comes time to meditate. Or everything that you do in this death time is a metaphor for the type of concentration that's needed to retain consciousness. So now we know in this lifetime, whatever job or occupation you have, do the best you can do, because something magical transpires when you pay attention. Whatever it may be. So now we're starting to find the reason why jobs exist, or the reason why in this reality, people may box, people may play basketball, people may sing, people may dance, people may be mathematicians or physicists. Whatever it is, it's designed for you to be able to focus. Because only the elite can be promised the ability to have eternal life through consciousness. When we go into what takes place when a person focuses, like for instance, I said, look at that sun right there, right? We call this sunshine. But we, instead of calling it hydrogen waves. When the children are subject to fluorescent lights in school, right? Or babies being born under halogen lights, which is a shock to the central nervous system of the child that's brought into the world, coming from triple darkness within the confines of the womb of the woman from which they derived, we know we're destroying that entity. But it's a scientific fact that children learn better Watch this. It's a scientific fact that children learn better when what? When they're subject to the sun. Because that light biologically embeds, and melanin and chlorophyll are first cousins, and so you synthesize that light, and that information, that's what light is, information, gets translated into your ability to retain information or remember ideas or become more focused, right? So hydrogen does that. Hydrogen waves causes one to pay more attention. It's a fact. People are able to pay more attention when subject to hydrogen waves in the form of sunlight than they're able to do indoors under lights that don't biologically embed, because it's not natural. You feel what I'm saying? So, this is just the build I was having with Aminette. And then the brother came along, but this is where I was going to go with her. And then when the brother came, I said, yo, let's see if we can record. But this is my build outside of the Rolls Royce. And that's why people don't even realize when I show them cars and that money, that's just because I need people to think I have a certain level of ignorance. Because when this information comes out, the attack is nearing. You know what I'm saying? Anytime I talk this information, it becomes hell. So also, even the spine, what causes us to age a whole lot more, and this is why I have a kinesiologist. Everybody should have one, and that's one that helps you with the understanding of the mechanics of the movement of the body. So I have a kinesiotherapist put me onto super game. And the reason why I have the kinesiotherapist is because angles is important, because if we study in sacred geometry, it is the key to our ascension, is our ability to retain information. The reason why I'm able to retain so much information is because I store my thoughts inside of different shapes. Depending on what type of thought it is, I'll put it in one of the 5 plutonic solids. That's a fact, and that's how I'm able to access the information like this. Like, I can just pull it up, boom, and I can just start reciting information. So we got to store information in shapes, and depending on what genre of the information it is, we put that thought into that particular shape. You feel me? This is mathematics though, and this is what the alphabetical symmetry of light is. The tone, the words that we speak have corresponding tones that have corresponding frequencies that have corresponding shapes, and those shapes, by no coincidence, are the ancient letters that's being used in Proto-Semitic languages and older. So, like for instance,
so the waves are like a radio wave, or even listen to these different wave distinctions.
if you get what's called a spectrum analyzer, and you was to speak through a spectrum analyzer, you will realize that each tone has its own shape, right? Yeah. And if we were to go, let's say, into Phoenician, if we were to go into ancient Phoenician language, okay, incorrectly called ancient Hebrew. There was no such thing. It's Phoenician. So if we were to go to the ancient Phoenician language and we look at their characters, by design, when you say those tones, the shapes of their letters will be made manifest. So in other words, if I say Aleph, Bet, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Head, Tet, Yokov, Kaf, Lam, Mim, Nu, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Fe, Sa, De, Kof, Case, Rinshin, Sa, Tav, right? If I go through the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Head, Tet. Guess what? Every letter I say, the way they draw it, is the exact shape of the frequency. What's the odds? Now, this is called the alphabetical symmetry of light. And what we learn is if we meditate or focus on just one of those shapes and we understand what we can get out of one of those shapes, we can now introduce new ideas and new information to this death cycle that will empower us in the death time after. You feel me? So being able to just see the shape in mind encapsulates energies that we can access for our empowerment in the death time. And it's the same case with shapes, and this is sacred geometry. If you take a sasahedron or dodecahedron, like if you look at the DNA from topward down, it'll look like a dodecahedron. You feel me? And then when we talking about phase conjugation, we talking about the ability for the heart to collapse on itself by way of the pericardium, which happens to look just like what? The pericardium is a bag that is wrapped around the heart that's shaped just like the headdress of Osiris. Not by accident. Because in order for us to make this ascension, we have to be able to manipulate the contractions of the heart in order that fractal waves may be produced. And by fractal waves, we mean waves that both add and multiply because they're recursive, right? That creates the mandible set, which is the actual shape of the heart that we've been drawing when we was children. When we was children, we drew the picture of the heart. Where did that picture come from? The heart don't look like that. The heart looks like Osiris' headdress. The heart don't look like the one that we draw on paper. The electromagnetic wave that's propagated from the proper collapsing of the heart on itself forms the heart shape that we've been drawing. What's the odds of that? It's called the mandible set. Now we keep walking. And what does the word heart mean in the Medu Neter? Ib. It means what? Mental, intellect, thought. That's what the word heart means in Medu Neter. And if we was to go into Hebrew, what they call Hebrew or ancient Phoenician, we'll see that they got two words for heart. They got ib and lave. And one is when you use the heart metaphorically as if to suggest that I had these thoughts in my heart, or with all the thoughts in my mind, in my heart. Whenever they talk like the heart has some realm or ability to communicate, they use lave. And they use ib when they just talk about the heart that pumps blood. You feel me? It's in the context of language. So they actually got two ways to say heart. One is the heart that communicates, and then the other heart is the literal heart that pumps blood. The ancients knew this. So now we look at the bag that's around the heart, that's designed to help the heart contract or collapse on itself to produce fractal waves that both add and multiply that are recursive, right? And in those recursive waves that both add and multiply, we find the mandible set. And when the heart properly contracts in that capacity, it causes the elasticity of the DNA. So the DNA starts unwinding and becomes what? A phase conjugating mirror. For the purposes of refracting light, sending the light body out to gain data about the universe, but only for a moment of time. There we go. Now we got to get into it. Now we got to get into what information is. You feel what I'm saying? Now we got to get into what information is, because when we get into what is information, and we learn DNA is information, particularly RNA, it's the conveyance of that information. Then we got to find out what is the DNA of the universe. Because all we doing is transmitting data from one DNA to another DNA when we're talking about phase conjugating. Because light is information. But remember this, if we pray, and pray in Hebrew actually means telepathy, the ability to communicate from one mind to the next. The word telepathy actually comes from the same root of the word prayer, and this is why they wear what you call the tehillim, right? Which is that little box that the Jews wear on their head during their rituals, which also gives you the root or the same word from which telepathy derives. But that's a whole nother conversation, right? Real interesting stuff going on. So now what happens is we're talking about communicating with the heavens and the host via phase conjugation, coherent heart frequency. I wrote the book. That's literally what the book's called, right? The scientific art form of praying, or the physics of praying, through the manipulation of contracting the heart and making it collapse upon itself by way of speech, chanting, or breathing, coherent heart breathing. There's different ways to cause the heart to collapse on itself properly, right? So now we want to know, so then what is prayer? Well, first of all, if we use words to pray, that's only half the battle. Why? Because space doesn't have air, and if it doesn't have air, tones is irrelevant, because speech is predicated upon air collapsing on itself. Speech is predicated upon air collapsing on itself. So if space is a vacuum, which means there's no air, then speech is obsolete. But what you can transmit or send is frequencies. And when those frequencies get modulated, now you got your own FM station, because that's what frequency modulation is, FM. Which means encoding frequencies for the purposes of transmitting information. So we're saying that the DNA can transmit information, not through speech, but speech can be the instigator for the frequency. So you can say, Mom. You say, Mom. Mommy! And if you say, Mommy, guess what happens? She knows you really need her because of the tone. Not so much the words. She's responding to the tone. And of course that will happen. You know what I'm saying? because I'm on fire right now. But yo, I got to get moving. I don't even know how this all happened. I was just building with Aminette about the importance of dying. And it was a real good look. And then the brother came, and thanks to him, he was the conduit that the universe brought. That I told you, if I go live now and I'm having a build that's natural, I'm going to say some things that I normally don't say because it's from a natural build. You feel me? If I just put it on, okay, today I'm going to talk to y'all about such and such, it's probably going to be a good build, but it's going to probably take me longer to cook, and then I might wind up being more in the economic and political aspect of things. But if I'm in a build just in my own cipher, it's going to be this kind of info. You feel me? So that's why I say, yo, let's put the camera on, because if I put the camera on, it's going to come out.
I think they deserve it.
Yeah, word. But yo, I'm going to get up with y'all. I'm glad y'all loved it. Yeah, this was fly. This is what I came into community teaching. This many people don't realize. My first 40 books was this. You feel me? My first 40 books was all this. If you used to get my sacred geometry book, you'd be like, whoa. If you get my supreme mathematics inception of the vesicle pieces, you'll be like, whoa. Right? I do this. Solar numerology, past life exegesis. I wrote that. That's what this is about. That's what we do. So anyway, I thank you very much. I appreciate y'all. Give it a week. The new site will be up. The updates on all the apps will be there on the Brother Polight app. And we're going to be litty. When I say we're going to be litty, we're going to be litty. Y'all going to love all the new upgrades and everything. I had to redo it. I had to put a lot of money into the security features on my site because someone literally cloned my site. I was getting some orders, somebody else gets some orders. I know you're like, man, something's always going on. Of course, because they don't want people to get the information. If you can hear this information, if you even do 10% of the research of anything that I said, because anything I say I can stand on, because I don't play on the just hearsay stuff. I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint on the strength, and I'm going to be breaking down. I don't even want to give y'all the title, but I'm going to be doing the PowerPoint on this, and I actually have a conversation about going to London too. I might give London this to initiate the task. I got to get on that London conversation now. I was supposed to be on that London conversation actually the whole time I've been doing this, because it's a very, very popular guy in media in London that wants to bring me out for the benefit of the people out there. And I'm going to go. I'm going to be in London. It's probably going to be next month or a month and a half, something to that effect. But I'm going to be in London. I may be on my death talk then. But death is just what it is. That's the order of the day. Embrace death. That's what we got to be on. It's the life thing that got us uncomfortable. Everything's backwards, and they did this on purpose so we could be confused. Master, nobody who's dying should be beseeching the purpose of life before they beseech the purpose of death. Tell me what the purpose of us dying is first before you start looking for the purpose of death. Facts. Okay, so I'm gonna talk to y'all later. I appreciate y'all so much. If you love the info, press 999, and also share. If you want to be part of the movement, people always say, what can I do to be part of the movement? Sometimes I don't got the money. Sometimes I can't travel. Sometimes I got the resource. Yes. Time on live. And I got a session. Yeah, so if you love the information, definitely press 9. And being part of the movement is as simple as you. Being part of the movement is as simple as you simply sharing the video and telling somebody, listen, you need to get to this. Or look, start at the 5-minute point or start at the 8-minute point. You know, tell them the part you love. Text her, tell her stop.
I'm trying to find her name.
Because she's just calling ridiculous. She got to stop. Yes. Oh, thanks for all the 9s. I see the 9s. Salute. I see the 9s. Salute, salute, salute. Much appreciated. Love you. It was definitely a great build. Definitely a great build. Ha! I'm feeling good. And you know, I'll be building. I'll be out here, Westwood, Beverly Hills, going hard. You know what I'm saying? I'll be going hard. Like I got like 100 people out here listening to me. That's the only way that we got to do that. That's 9. Word up, all the 9s. So follow up with that 9 and do me a favor and share this with as much people as you think need perspective about life or death. Even if it's someone that you know don't do no type of knowledge, say, yo, do me a favor and just watch this. and tell me what you think about it. But I promise you this, family, when I do the PowerPoint to mathematically show you or fortify everything that I just said, you're gonna be like, God damn, that man got it. You know, I didn't want to curse. I had to switch up the word real quick. But I had to slow down on my speech. But yeah, because you gotta linguistically fast. That's part of our ascension. That's why I'm on what I'm on. That's why I got me a that's why I got me a kinesiotherapist, right? That's why I'm dealing with wave vibration and using the power plate. The power plate helps me with my proprioception. And proprioception is real dope. So when you're doing vibration therapy, especially on a power plate, for instance, what it does is helps you reactivate muscles that's been deactivated. Okay. Yeah, I'm about to start going into proprioception. Yeah, I was going to go into the proprioception and vibration therapy as it relates to kinesiology, because that's important. I give you one example of what I'm talking about, though. One quick example. The spine is everything. Of course, it's relaying all the data that you need for the rest of your body. The spine is very important, connected to the brain, right? So the name of the game is to get us to compromise the integrity of the flow of electricity or the current that has to go up and down the spine, or the jet pillar. Metal nature, right? The jet pillar. So we know insanity is linked to bad posture. Watch this. Let me get this right here.
It's open.
It's open? Watch this. So we live in a nose-diving society and a sitting paradigm. And every time we sit, we create scar tissue. Every time you're at a perpendicular and your knee looks like this, every time, look, 90 degrees, bow, right? 90 degrees, because normally this would be the chair arm, bow, right? Every time we sit like that, every time we sit like that, we create scar tissue. So every time we stand with poor posture, we cause the aging process to speed up as well. Secondly, when someone stands up, you shouldn't be able to see their back. And when you see, like, stand up real quick. And if you're able, turn around. Keep your hands straight. Yeah. And what you'll notice is sometimes you'll be able to see the back of people's palms. Oh, pardon me. I got to flip the camera. You good. Sometimes, you're good. If you see the back of someone's palms when they're walking, then you know they're out of alignment. And when they're standing, of course, we'll do a different model with jackets off at a different time. But if you can see the person's back, that means that the shoulders is protruding. That's not supposed to happen. So we're basically devolving. We're almost back into, we have what you call anterior pelvic tilt. And that means that the pelvis is like this. And as an end result, the pelvis going down, everything else is compensating. And now your glutes are not being used to sustain the rest of the energies that keep you homo erectus, homogeneous. You know, you're supposed to be past all those cats. But right now, because your anterior pelvic tilt, you don't even use the muscles behind you. So you're synergistically dominant, which means that it's almost like an anvil in front of you. Because when we work out for everyone to see us. You want people to see your boobs. I want people to see my pectorals. You want people to see your shoulders. We're not working out where we can see the back of us, because then we'll probably work that out more. We work out in such a way so everyone can see everything in front of us. And so that combined with sitting down to eat, sitting down to talk, sitting down to learn, right, will wind up being synergistically dominant. And that means everything is pulling us forward, pulling us forward, pulling us forward. Now, we also have what you call the nose diving aspect. Because remember, the more we compromise the spine, the less flow of energy, consciousness we have available to us. So we're talking about the geometry of consciousness. And so we can't compromise that spine. So now, guess what's happening? Our head, we're incurring a difference of about 30 pounds in or around of negativity just holding our head up. I'm calling it negativity.
You supposed to go like this?
Cause look, I'm gonna tell you why. Watch this. I'm gonna hold this cup like this. That's one way, right? Hold this cup like this. Hold that cup like that. Watch this. That's the weight. Put your hands completely out. Yeah, like that. You feel the weight?
Yeah.
Now, hold the cup like this. The tips of your finger. Is the weight different?
Yeah.
That's our next.
What the hell?
Because I want you to watch yourself the next time you drink. I had to get out the habit of it now that I got a kinesiotherapist. When we drink, we don't bring the cup to us and drink out the straw. We bring the face to the cup. And in fact, when we're on the phone,
It depends.
watch this. Don't worry. When you're on the phone, watch this. Go on your phone. I mean, look at your phone. Act like you're doing something on the phone. Look at the position your head is in.
It's down. I'm supposed to
It's
go like
down.
this?
So your shoulders are closing and you're nose diving. So if you're on the computer, if you're on the phone, and even when you're eating, are you bringing when you're eating, are you bringing the food to you or are you meeting the food?
If I'm hungry, yo, it's going down.
As if it's gonna take longer for one or the other to take place. You feel what I'm saying? So what happens is we're changing the dynamics of our skeletal structure, and now the burden of 10 to 15 pounds on the spine for your head has now become 45 pounds, because now instead of holding the head up like this, you're holding the head up like this. You see? It's two different weights. You're asking for more weight. Gravity is against you more when you're nosediving as opposed to sitting up straight. And you do this to eat, you do this to drink, and you do this when you're on the computer, and you do this when you're on the phone. So eventually, your design is to nosedive. And this is the nosedive. And then eventually you get older and you start walking like this. And you wonder why.
Let me record you.
Yo.
So look, when you're sitting like this, you're creating scar tissue.
You're creating scar tissue every time you
So
sit
how
down.
you supposed to sit?
You're supposed to stand.
All the time?
No, you're not supposed to stand all the time. But guess what? You remember more. It's easier to learn and retain information when you're standing. And if you go into certain Asian cultures or even in the poke spots, you're going to see that they got tables erected, high stands, tables erected from the wall with no chairs, so you can stand and eat. And if you go to Staples right now, you're going to realize they got laptop stands where you can type while standing. You put your laptop on the stand to type while standing.
That's true.
Because if you develop scar tissue, now you're going to have to roll it out. It's like kneading dough. Okay, so you're going to have to get rid of the scar tissue by getting on those rollers. But if we're not thinking compensatory action, then what we're doing is just developing more and more scar tissue accumulatively, and we become more and more synergistically dominant, because what we're making is one muscle shorten where other muscles want to extend, and then eventually, because the process of exercising the way we know it causes us to create a shortening of the muscles, right? Because if you make a muscle, right, eventually, you see this? Like, look at this. Eventually, this I'm telling you, the goal, especially for the brothers, right? What we want to tighten up. Tighten up means shorten. So now we do this, right? And we love this part.
Woo!
We like the short part, right? So you do the short part. These muscles want to extend, and as I'm exercising, I'm creating what? Synergistic dominance, because now I'm making this tight. I'm shortening the muscles. Then eventually, what'll happen? I'll be walking like this. Eventually, I'll be walking like this. Then eventually, I'll be walking like this. Then eventually, I can't close my arms. Then eventually, I'm closed like this. Because guess what? The body has to compensate for the weight. And the place where the compensation takes place is the bending of the spine. Then my head is like this. And then I got what? Interior pelvic tilt, because I'm probably eating a bunch of food with GMOs. And if you consume a lot of food with GMOs, then guess what? You wind up with a beer belly. You get a beer belly from eating GMOs, not necessarily drinking beer. Your belly will get like that just from consuming foods with GMOs. It's a fact. And what it causes is the beer belly, which now you have mad weight there, so your pelvic tilts, right? And then what? Now you got this compensation part, right? And the reason why they call this part the compensation part, right, is because the pelvic area tilts, the part that normally gets hurt the most is the knee and then the ankle. So people look to fix the knee and fix the ankle, but they don't fix the reason why you have the problem with the knee or the ankle. So you tear your meniscus and all this other stuff because you have anterior pelvic tilt. So if you look at the brother Tristan Thomas, that's with the Kardashian, who played for the Cavs, look how he walks. He walks like this. And you know what? If you watch a bunch of those brothers playing, they got anterior pelvic tilt. The pelvic area is tilted like this, and then you eating foods with GMOs. So not only do you got the tilt, but now the belly's coming out because of the GMOs. You feel what I'm saying? And you're synergistically dominant. So now the tilt is on, the belly is out. So now you got skinny people with even big bellies. And you're thinking, oh, all the weight is going to his belly. How do you get that? And guess what? You can't get rid of that no matter how much abs you do, workouts you do, if you're going to keep taking in GMOs. But that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. And then you become the genetically modified organism.
That's what GMOs is.
Yeah, you think when you eat genetically modified organisms that happened to something else, but the goal is to make that happen to you. So now your whole skeletal structure is different. Your whole skeletal structure is different. You become the genetically modified organism. That's another conversation. We're gonna call the next session genetically modified organism. That'd be dope. But I gotta get out of here, man. It's in my spirit to keep going in. If you like it and you love it, send the video off. Y'all already know. And that's compliments of my kinesiotherapist. You know, he has the spot extensions, that's with a hyphen, EX-tensions, located in Boca, Florida, soon to be worldwide. But I've learned a lot, and that's integral to what I'm doing with sacred geometry for the purposes of my ascension in this death time. Because like I said to you, I'm in a race with life for bliss in the interim of this death. And we'll get to that later. So I hope you enjoyed this information. I hope it was very engaging and entertaining for you. This is really the build that I want us to get on. The only reason I want y'all to make some bread or money, the only reason I want you, and you know, bread is funny because that's what's on the table for the word Hotep. It's a table with bread on it. And Hotep doesn't really mean peace. Hotep, you know, means offering. Thank you. Because if I came to you, my sign of peace would be that I'm giving you something to contribute or add on of value to you. And at the very least, nutrition is always considered the promise of better living. So at the very least, I give you bread. So Hotep in the Medu Neter is designed with a table with bread on it. And it means offering. And because my thought was to offer you something when I engage you or come into your household, that brought about peace. And in turn, is practiced so much, Hotep winds up taking on the connotation of peace to the point we think it means peace, but it means offering, right? And so I want to talk to you about getting that bread, right? Which is interesting because it's like a form of Hotep. So you have the ability to exercise some of this information or make some of this information applicable, because unfortunately it costs us money now to reverse the damage. I'm just doing what I can to give you as much free information as possible so you can take things to perspective to move yourself along further. I know spirituality is not supposed to sound like it has anything to do with science and math, but they lied to us. It ain't the first time. Peace. I love you all. Be part of the movement and share the video. Peace.